Every time you pick up your phone without a reason, someone, somewhere, gets paid. Not a little, a lot. And that someone is not you. I have watched generations make the same financial mistakes, different eras, different tools, different temptations. But the mechanism is always the same. Someone builds a system. That system is designed to extract value from you. And the most remarkable part? You volunteer to enter it. Every single day, usually within the first 60 seconds of waking up. I am not here to tell you to delete your apps. That advice is everywhere, and it changes nothing. What I want to show you goes much deeper than habit. It reaches into the architecture of how your mind has been quietly, systematically, and brilliantly rewired to make other people wealthy, while leaving you feeling vaguely empty and financially stuck. What you are about to learn is not taught in financial literacy courses. It is not trending on any platform. In fact, the platforms themselves would prefer you never understand it. Stay with me. Here is the first thing nobody tells you. Your attention is not just valuable. It is the most traded commodity on earth right now. More than oil, more than gold. And unlike oil, it regenerates every morning when you wake up. So the extraction never has to stop. When economists talk about a market, they mean a place where goods and services are bought and sold. There is a buyer, a seller, and a price. The attention economy is not a poetic description of distraction. It is a real market. Your attention is the product. Advertisers are the buyers. And the platforms are the brokers, taking a percentage of every transaction. Now here is where it connects directly to your money. Every minute you spend scrolling is a minute your brain is not doing something else. Not building a skill, not creating something, not thinking a thought that originated inside your own mind. The phone does not just cost you time, as people often say. It costs you what economists call opportunity cost, the value of the next best thing you could have been doing instead. But this is where things become dangerous. Opportunity cost is invisible. You never see the money you did not make. You never meet the version of yourself who spent that hour differently. Loss aversion, one of the most powerful forces in human psychology, only activates when you can see what you lost. So the cost of your attention remains hidden from your emotional radar. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote nearly 2,000 years ago, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." He was describing wealthy Romans consumed by entertainment, spectacle, and distraction, the ancient equivalent of an infinite scroll. They had the resources to build great things, and most of them simply watched instead. You have more raw potential at 22 than most people in human history. The question is not whether your phone is stealing your time. The question is whether you have ever calculated what that time is actually worth. Let me tell you something about dopamine that neuroscientists understand, but marketers mastered first. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. That is a myth repeated so often it feels like fact. Dopamine is the anticipation chemical. It spikes not when you receive a reward, but when you expect one. That distinction changes everything. When you pick up your phone and open an app, your brain releases dopamine before anything even happens. The act of reaching for the phone is the trigger. Your brain has learned that something interesting might be waiting there, a message, a like, a surprising video. That unpredictability is what creates the loop. Psychologists call this a variable reward schedule. Slot machines operate on the same principle. In the 1950s, B.F. Skinner demonstrated that intermittent, unpredictable rewards create stronger behavioral conditioning than consistent rewards. The designers of every major social platform know this. It is not accidental. It is engineered. Now connect this to finance. When your dopamine system is chronically overstimulated by rapid micro-rewards, something quiet and devastating happens to your relationship with delayed gratification. Your brain recalibrates its reward threshold. The slow satisfaction of saving money, building a skill, or watching an investment grow begins to feel flat, boring, not worth the effort. Economists call this temporal discounting, the tendency to undervalue future rewards in favor of immediate ones. Everyone does it to some degree, but when your dopamine system is trained on the speed and intensity of a social media feed, that tendency increases dramatically. Your future self feels farther away, less real, less worth protecting. This is why financial advice alone does not work. You can know every principle of personal finance and still struggle to act on it, because the issue is not knowledge. The issue is that your brain has been physiologically tuned to prefer now over later, and the phone has been reinforcing that preference every single day. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The same device that shows you a video about building wealth is simultaneously degrading your neurological capacity to do it. Pay close attention to this next part. This is the layer most people never reach. There is a concept in psychology called social comparison theory, introduced by Leon Festinger in 1954. It states that humans determine much of their self-worth by comparing themselves to others. This is ancient wiring. In a small tribe, knowing where you stood socially was genuinely important for survival. Status meant access to resources, protection, and partnership. But what happens when that ancient wiring is exposed to a feed of thousands of people, all presenting the most curated, optimized version of their lives, hundreds of times each day? Your brain begins making social comparisons constantly, against people you will never meet, against moments that were staged, against lifestyles that were borrowed, filtered, or entirely fabricated, and every comparison that leaves you feeling behind, less than, or left out, creates a psychological pressure to resolve that feeling. And how do modern humans often resolve feelings of inadequacy? They consume, they spend, they buy the thing that signals they belong to the group they saw online. This is not weakness. It is not stupidity. It is your evolutionary hardware being exploited by people who studied your psychology more carefully than you ever needed to study theirs. The average Gen Z consumer sees somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 brand impressions every day. Each one is designed not to sell a product directly. It is designed to attach that product to an identity, to a feeling, to a version of yourself you might want to become. The product is simply the price of admission. Now here is the counterintuitive insight. The most aggressive financial drain from your phone is not what you buy through it. It is the identity anxiety it creates, which then influences what you spend everywhere else. The coffee, the outfit, the experience you posted before you even finished having it. Your phone does not just sell you things. It creates the wound, then rents you the bandage. Now it becomes genuinely interesting, because the same principles used against you can be redirected. I want you to think about a concept from behavioral economics called commitment devices. A commitment device is a choice you make today that constrains your future self in a beneficial way. Odysseus had himself tied to the mast so he could hear the sirens without steering the ship toward them. He knew his future self could not be trusted in the moment of temptation, so he removed the choice before temptation arrived. The practical applications are not what most people expect. The first principle is simple: distance creates resistance. Every additional step between you and an impulsive decision reduces the likelihood of making it. Move shopping apps off your home screen. Require a 48-hour waiting period before any purchase inspired by something you saw online. Remove stored payment information from your browser. These are not willpower strategies. They are architectural strategies. You are not fighting the impulse. You are redesigning the environment so the impulse has farther to travel. The second principle is this: redicate the dopamine architecture. Do not try to destroy it. You cannot simply stop seeking rewards. Your brain will find another outlet, and it may be worse. Instead, attach the reward loop to something that compounds. Every time you would open a social feed, open a book instead, even if only for 60 seconds, or check the balance of a savings account that is steadily growing. Your brain cares less about the content of the reward than it does about the structure. Give it a structure that builds rather than drains. The third principle is the one most people miss. Reclaim the act of solitude. The phone's deepest financial damage is not what it makes you buy. It is the thinking it prevents, the business idea, the pattern you noticed, the question you started asking. These things emerge from quiet, from boredom, from the uncomfortable experience of sitting alone with your own thoughts. Thomas Edison, Isaac Newton beneath the apple tree, Charles Darwin on his daily walks. These are not romantic myths of genius. They are examples of what sustained, quiet thinking can produce. The human mind, left alone with a meaningful problem, is extraordinarily capable, but it requires silence to do its deepest work. And silence is the one thing the attention economy cannot afford to give you. Here is the realization that ties everything together. Your phone is not a distraction from your financial life. It is a financial instrument, one that is currently running against you. Every technology in history has been neutral at its core and directional in its design. The printing press could spread knowledge or propaganda. Television could educate or sedate. The internet could liberate or surveil. The smartphone is no different. It is an extraordinarily powerful tool. But for most people, it is currently a tool working in someone else's interest. The companies built on your attention are among the most profitable organizations in human history. They did not become that way by accident. They became that way because they understood human psychology, your psychology, with extraordinary precision. They understand temporal discounting. They understand social comparison. They understand variable reward schedules. And they engineered around all of it. Here is the profound irony. The generation with more access to financial information than any generation before it is also the generation most aggressively targeted by systems designed to extract wealth before it can accumulate. You are not failing at financial discipline because you lack willpower. You are navigating a system specifically designed to circumvent willpower. And knowing that changes the game. Because now, instead of blaming yourself, you can start designing. You can build the same kind of intentional architecture around your financial life that they built around their extraction systems. Deliberate, strategic, patient. The one specific shift I want you to make tomorrow morning is this. Before you pick up your phone, decide what you are looking for. One specific thing. And when you find it, put the phone down. That is it. One habit, one decision. Because it begins restoring something the algorithm slowly took from you. Your sense of being the one in control of your own attention. And attention, as we have established, is money. 3 principles to leave with you. First, your financial life is downstream of your attention. Where your attention goes consistently, your money eventually follows. That has always been true. The phone simply made the extraction faster and less visible. Second, the tools of your exploitation can also become the tools of your liberation, but only when you understand the mechanism. You cannot opt out of the modern world, but you can enter it with awareness, and that changes your relationship with it entirely. Third, wealth, in its deepest form, has never been about money. It has always been about sovereignty. The freedom to direct your own energy, your own time, your own thinking. Every generation has had to reclaim that sovereignty from whatever system sought to capture it. Yours is no different, only the system is newer. The ancient Stoics practiced something they called the morning intention. Before the day began, they decided who they intended to be, not reactively, deliberately. Before the world had a chance to assign them a role, they chose their own. You live in an era where the world will try to assign you your role within seconds of waking up. The notification arrives before the intention does. And so the question worth sitting with is this. In the story of your financial life, are you the author or are you the audience? If something in this conversation helped you see your world a little differently, that is exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe if you value depth over distraction. There is much more to explore together.